Welcome back to the DJ Sessions, where we feature the best DJs, producers, and industry professionals from around the world. I'm your host, Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and coming in all the way halfway across this wonderful, great United States, nation of the United States of America, from Florida. We have Sherry Thomas coming in from Tampa. How you doing today, Sherry?
I'm good, Darren. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you're here today because we reached out to you in regards to your podcast series you do called Analog Smile. Tell our DJ Sessions fans a little bit about your series.
Well, my series, Analog Smile, is a podcast, and we speak with music industry professionals, musicians, authors, podcasters, such as yourself, and other people that are interested in, and have a love of music or a love of creating music.
Yeah, and when did you start this podcast?
I started it at the end of February, of this year, so 2022. So it's a baby. It's still in its toddler stages, but I've been doing this in one form or another for the last 20 or 30 something years now. So.
And is this your first podcast series that you've hosted?
No, it is not. A couple of years ago, I started another music podcast, but it wasn't going the direction I wanted it to. It felt kind of like I had imposter syndrome in one way or another. And so I kind of pushed that aside. And I hosted a very niche podcast that featured other podcasters. So basically it was a podcast about podcasts. And that really wasn't hitting my sweet spot, which is music. So I took some time off, probably about a year and a half, and just reevaluated a lot of things and decided what I really wanted to focus on and the direction, and had to think of a catchy name, a name that didn't sound like I was ripping off a song or, just wasn't original. So I did a lot of reassessing and came back to this. So that's what kicked off Analog Smile. And I've been happy doing it because it gives me the opportunity to meet a lot of different people, different creators, and people like yourself who, enjoy doing what we love doing.
I can definitely relate how it goes. When I first started in the industry, I was working on a public access television show, a hip hop television show. And it wasn't till years later that I broke away from that and wanted to do my own television show, but I didn't want to do it on public access. I wanted to do it on broadcast television. And within a year of breaking away, I actually produced my first show to Fox, executive produced my first show to Fox. And then a few years later came back when I had a number of ideas for different shows on the table, and we rebranded. And then we had 8 separate television shows on the table under the moniker ITV. And then I started getting into podcasting and live streaming. And now, overall, the main one show that I produce for the last almost 13 years now is the DJ Sessions. And even the DJ Sessions has got its own subgenres of different shows underneath that umbrella. So I definitely know what it's like to go through and reinvent and figure out where your groove is and what you really like doing. And I mean, we had shows ranging from live music, fashion, art, short film, restaurants, nightlife, video games, sports, comedy. Oh, I guess we had 9. And, and that time it was all under the umbrella. But the one thing that I had never done was something that I really liked doing was going out to nightclubs. And everyone would always talk about how come there's, you would talk about the nightclub experience, but nobody had cameras in there. You might have a photographer in there taking pictures of what goes on in the nightclubs, but no video. And there was no way to distribute that video because there was no podcasting or YouTube either. So when I came up with the concept for the DJ Sessions, that's the one that kind of stuck with me. Like you said, I want to do something about the music, or it just resonates with what you really do. And I took a passion that I love of nightlife and the nightlife music and the DJs and turn that into a live streaming podcast series. And that's kind of been the direction I've focused. I could always go back and do those shows.
Right.
But, it's kind of like, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with this one for now and focus on one thing. So I totally understand how that goes. Now, what made you choose music as your main form? What was the driving passion there?
Well, that's a loaded question. Are you ready for a long answer?
I am ready for a long answer.
Okay. Well, music has been in my blood, pumping through my veins since I was launched out of the womb. Okay. So I can remember, yeah, I was born in 1970. So that makes me officially old. So no, I'm kidding. No, so I'm 51. I'll be 52 years old in December. But I grew up focused on anything that involved music, whether it was a commercial, a variety show, like something as cheesy as, Donnie and Marie or Sonny and Cher, or anything that involved music. And my parents were not musicians, but they loved music. So I was exposed to a lot of psychedelic rock and Southern rock, R&B, pop, Motown, and it just, and then MTV launched when I was 10 years old, and that was a game changer for me. I was glued to the television. It took a act of, Congress to get me removed from the television. And so I've always loved it. And I became a DJ in college when I was 17. And I did that for a few years, and that was a lot of fun. I met a lot of people. And then I pivoted into becoming a music journalist because I was always a great writer. And I wanted to continue with speaking with, rock stars, musicians, buskers, whoever I could, to talk about music because it still ran through my veins. And then I've been a writer since 1993, writing for different publications throughout the United States. The one most prominently that I'm still writing for is the Aquarian Weekly, and they're a weekly, well, now daily, they're on the web now, but they were a well-known weekly publication that would come out and, covered the music scene in the tri-state area, mainly New York City, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. So 4 states, I guess. But it's still available online, and they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I could say that my, reviews are in, the hallowed halls of the Rock Hall, and did internet broadcasting for a while, and just then decided to move it over into the podcast realm. So there's your answer.
Yeah, no, I'd like to hear the journey because, like I said, I have a similar pathway, a journey that went from one medium to the next medium to the next medium. I mean, people honestly, like I was talking to my crew the other day, and they're like, Darren, you kind of like throw a lot of stuff on us, and it sounds like it's all discombobulated and going all in a million different directions. I go, no, I know where it's going. I know exactly where this is going. I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and in my life. And funny enough, by the way, just to let you know something, I'm not that much younger than you are. I'm 48.
Oh my gosh, you look like you're like in your young 30s. So
yeah, when you're talking about being born in the 70s, I was born in 74. And I too remember MTV and my parents weren't musically inclined. Definitely listened to the same genre, same kind of music. It's like we had the same musical background growing up with our parents, but my brothers were musicians. And so, watching my dad buy them the music gear, Kurt was a guitar player, Rob was a singer, but we got studio gear in the house that I was never supposed to touch, keyboards, rack mounts, 8-track recorders, 4-track recorders, all that fun stuff normal kids didn't have in suburbia, and especially at that time, the amount of money to get that same kind of gear today, even though it's gotten smaller, faster, cheaper, better. If you took the equivalent of the money that was spent back then today, we probably would have the equivalent of maybe like a $250,000, $300,000 studio in our house.
Yeah.
That my brothers didn't really know how to read the manuals. They just got in there and plug and played with stuff. And, this is the time when MIDI was kind of brand new, and you'd get instruction manuals that were literally translated direct from Japanese into English and made no sense. And so, I'd be like 8 years old reading these manuals, like hitting the buttons. And I became more on the technical side of things. I always liked the technical, and also watching TV a lot. Was I think movies was my bigger thing. I didn't go to school later on in life to become a film major, though. I went to school to learn how to run a company, predominantly a production company, so I could film my broadcast television series that I wanted to film. My idol kind of was like Michael Lauren, Aaron Spelling. I wanted to go make those syndication TV routes, work with studio, those kind of TV programming, not the Spielberg or Lucas or, big names.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like that direction too. I've always loved the Aaron Spelling series. They were always like, you never knew what you were expecting around the next corner. They were corny, but yet they were also like amazing at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I kind of gravitated towards the likes of looking at a show like Saturday Night Live. And every week it was changing with new guests. It was new improv, new comedy, writing with what was current trends or current what's going on. And I kind of like that. We're kind of part news, but we're kind of current what's happening right now in the place. And we're not reality television. I kind of, but we are real programming, not
reality.
Fake reality, make this up, and reality television. And I always promise to keep a positive outlook on things. I don't go out to go for the Barbara Walters or the Dan Rather or the Oprah Winfrey. Let's get them on the couch and get them crying. And we're on the fun side of things. So, over the years, I'm sure you've chatted with a lot and talked with a lot of musicians and industry professionals and people. I'm this question always gets me every time I ask it to you because I don't know how to answer it. But who's been the most notable person you've had on your series or interviewed?
The most notable?
I guess I should say, let me reverse. Let me change that up. What's been your favorite episode or time you've done an interview?
Oh my gosh. In my whole career of or just on the podcast?
Could be the podcast, could be your career. I mean, I've had some pretty big people on my shows in the past.
I mean, I have to say, the most memorable experience on the podcast, it wasn't even a celebrity. And I've had a lot of like really talented and notable celebrities on my podcast, musicians such as JJ French from Twisted Sister, Felix Cavalieri from the Rascals, and Susie Quattro, who played Leather Tuscadero on Happy Days, who's a accomplished musician herself. And those conversations were wonderful, and I'll never trade them in for anything. But I think the most real was an author who her name is Melissa Mazzaros, and she put out a memoir about the time where she was a publicist, a music publicist, and she was leaving work to go to a Judas Priest concert. She crossed the street and she was hit by a car. And so her book talks about that experience and the trials and tribulations that she had gone through and keeps going through up until this day. And now she does publicity and PR for comic books. So she went through a period of reinvention herself. Mm-hmm. So I had an experience where I had suffered a traumatic brain injury as well. I was hit head on by a driver going into work. And I was in the hospital for quite some time, and I've had maybe close to 15 to 20 surgeries since that time and still continue to. So, we were both talking about our experiences with each other and about the same issues. And, it just got to the point where we were both in tears, crying. They were happy tears, but they were also like tears of, yeah, I get what you're going through. And, you understand me. It was one of those turning points in a conversation where it's like, it was just touching and very emotional on so many different areas and spectrums.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very heartfelt. That's awesome. Do you still stay in contact with her?
oh yeah, actually her mom lives in the same area that I do, so, and she lives in the Seattle area also.
Oh,
So we're, she said, oh, when I come visit, let's hang. And I'm like, absolutely, let's hang out when you come down to visit your mom. So that's kind of like, in the future, I don't know exactly when, but when it happens, I'm sure, we'll have a couple of drinks and some good conversations too. So.
mhm. Now, do you still get to go out? Do you still go out to concerts and events?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. My injuries are, I walk a lot slower than I used to. Like your 88-year-old grandmother, if anyone who's out there listening, could probably beat me in a relay race. But but yeah, I still go out. I just go with the flow. I'm a lot more cautious. I won't be, diving in the pit anywhere or like dancing in a large like area full of people. I'll just, do a little shimmy in the corner where I'm standing.
I remember it was years ago, a friend of mine asked me to go to a rock show, but it was more like a death metal rock show.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at this place. He says, come on, man, jump in the pit. Go in the pit with me. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not doing that. I'm going to get punched. Somebody's going to get punched in the face. And not only did I see a terrible incident, not what I call a terrible incident, but something like that happen where an altercation between two people happened, but my friend also ended up twisting his ankle in the pit that night. I go, that's exactly why I don't go in those things.
Mm-hmm.
Back when I grew up and I went to my brother's shows, you get in the mosh pit and if you fell over, people would pick you up. They'd carry you. It was kind of that thing it was like a fun dancer. Nowadays, these people are getting in there and kids are coming in going, I want to get punched. I got a scar. And I'm like, you probably got a concussion too. Like, no, that's, it's just, I don't want to be standing there at a concert and all of a sudden get punched in the face,
Oh yeah.
But,
I mean, I've been to quite a few concerts. I've lost track, to be honest with you. I can't even speculate on how many I've been to. Let's just say it's in the hundreds and possibly into the thousands, because I used to go out every night for years and years. So, but I mean, yeah, I would go to punk shows and like the Ramones, and kids would walk out with compound fractures, and it was just mayhem. And so I learned early on, that's the area that you want to stay away from,
And your podcast series, Analog Smile, you're releasing that on a daily basis, correct?
A couple of times a week. It depends. It really depends. Like, I know in this month is particularly nuts. Like, I'm talking to people 2 times a day. Because it's the summer, right? So a lot of people are doing promotion for their albums or their tours, and so I'm getting fielded left and right. So I'm like, okay, let's put you on, on this day. So, but I pretty much, know when to say, okay, look, we need to schedule it, not maybe this week, but maybe in 2 weeks, like the tour might be in full swing at that point. But, you want people to go out to their shows, and it's worldwide. So it's not something like it's focused at, and you know this too, it's not like they're going to a radio station the same day of their concert in that city. So a podcast is flexible in the way of when it airs. But, you know, if someone has like urgency to get it on, I'll try to do that for them. So
yeah, I just was in an interview an hour and a half ago, and the artist I was interviewing, they're like, "Oh, our new album comes out on June 10th, so maybe this interview will come out before then." I go, "I'm going to Phoenix this weekend for business, so this is getting up and on it's getting out there before I leave to Phoenix. I don't want to leave and go to do business out of town with stuff on the table." Like, say, I try to be, time is of the essence. And you're right. I definitely feel that summertime rush. And obviously, with a lot of things opening back up and people being able to do stuff now again, you can feel that last month, and with our current pattern or our previous pattern, what we're doing, was it about 10 to 12 interviews a month? My calendar is so far booked out that I have people saying, "Darren, I've tried to look as far out as July and I can't even get a date in with you." And I have probably 40, I think today, 52 interviews on the books and guest appearances with mixes coming on the show over the next 30 days.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm like, oh, can I get a breather? But, I do make it a point to schedule for a certain time during the day. Mm-hmm. And I also take weekends off, because you have to step away from it for a while. Otherwise, you're just going to get completely burned out. And, like if it's a friend, I might, squeeze them in, during after the hours that I usually record or on the weekend, because, that then it'll just be a fun hang, but, usually I try to keep it at a certain period of time, and also, carve out dates for myself too.
I know exactly what you mean there. Not that I'm endorsing this product or are we paid in any way for an endorsement or anything at all, but Calendly has become my new best friend. When about a couple of months ago, I was going to try to keep all my interviews and all my dates and times on my to-do list on a piece of paper. And yeah, that didn't work too well. So then I got Calendly and I made it, so it was just Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can schedule interviews. Here's the link, and block it off, give me time and all that stuff. And then I started reaching out to do podcast interviews with people, and we had to set that as a whole nother calendar. And then I actually just started using it for my employee one-on-ones and the people who work with, and they got to book it all 3 different times. And it completely changed it. And but it got so busy, I had to open up a Thursday slot. I just last week had to open up a Friday slot. And I'm like, this is getting okay. I wanted it though. I wanted this. So I don't want to scale back, because I feel like I set myself a bar. Say I want to be aggressive. I want to get this much content. We want to ramp up for everything that we have planned coming up towards the end of the year. We have a major music conference we're going to over in Amsterdam called ADE. It's a huge electronic music conference. It's about 400,000 people a day for 7 days. And it's all business during the day and party at night. And I've never been to Europe, let alone never been to ADE. And with all the industry professionals we met over the years, it's just going to be a great fun time to finally get out and be able to shake hands and meet people and talk with them again, because it hasn't happened for years. So
yeah, and have a blast too,
and have a fun time there too. So we're really excited for that coming up. And we're gonna try to do some work. I keep scaling back my vision of what I wanted to do there. Going, we're gonna have the Airbnb and we're gonna turn it into a studio and we're gonna invite people to come by and hang out. And then I'm like, no, let's not do that, because then we're gonna be trapped at the studio when everyone's out at the event networking. Mm-hmm. And why don't we do networking when we're out on the street talking to everyone? I go, wait a second. Then we're working while we should be having fun. Why don't we just go have fun? And if somebody's there, I can improv and pick up a camera. We'll get an interview. Okay, that sounds like the plan.
Yeah. Well, Darren, you were talking about Calendly, but do you know what I endorse?
Oh, yeah.
I endorse coffee. That is my endorsement. Coffee. just plain and simple. My addictions are coffee and music. So
I'm a tea guy myself. Usually it's either my black tea, my chai tea, or my green tea in the morning. Definitely helps get the kick in, but definitely keeping that schedule though, back looking at it with Calendly, it kind of was one of those things that saved me from burning out. I know I can get to my computer, I can do my emails, go into a meeting, take a break, and I can schedule things. It's just a nice way to keep things organized. Now, with your podcast, what do you foresee the future of? Where do you want it to go with Analog Smile? I mean, you sound like you've been doing this for a while. You've been interviewing people for a while, but is this something you would take kind of on in your local area? You go city to city with it maybe, or is it on the ground, or is it just an online format?
Well, right now it's online format. It's, just a basic podcast. I would just like to be known as a podcast that people would like to come on to talk to me about their music. And I don't mean just, like big names, but yeah, big names are great. Don't get me wrong. I go after them just like every other podcaster. And yeah, I mean, I think my primary focus is just to be recognized as a credible journalist, not just, and I'm not knocking podcasters, that they have their own methods and they have their own audiences, but there are a lot of podcasts that are like a particular niche. It's like two dudes like cracking jokes with each other and talking about Bon Jovi, and that's great. And they have a great following. But that's not me. I want to have a deeper conversation with people and, have a little bit of fun too. But it's not like I'm going to get an air horn and like whoopee cushions either. So there's being a journalist for as long as I have been, I just want a little bit more depth to it and more recognition. Because if you don't have names behind you, you're not going to be taken seriously by people in the music industry. Like I could pitch all day to people, say, oh, I do this, I talk about this, and I love what I'm doing. But they'll say, oh, what are your numbers? And it's all about numbers to them. It's not about and it's the publicist. And I have great relationships with publicists. Don't get me wrong. I have some really great friends who are publicists, and some of them are my best friends. But there are some who are just after numbers only, and that's frustrating to someone like me. I don't have a name behind me. I was never published in the Rolling Stone, and I haven't published a book about, the history of pop punk or whatever, like I could just pull things out of the air and throw them out at you. But if you're not a celebrity or no name, then, people like to push you aside and go on to the person that will get the most numbers. And the numbers game is not my jam. It's about the real discussion.
I can completely understand what that means. I don't know if people outside of the podcasting realm understand what that means. When I was doing broadcast television, we had Nielsen ratings, and even though podcasting it's been around for a while, audio blogs, and then it got into video podcasting and vlogs, and it still is considered, after 17 years of me being in the starting with my first podcast, it's still kind of the wild, wild west out there. And, somebody could, what we saw 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago now, is the rise of podcasters jumping up. It doubled, if not tripled. And same with live streaming. We saw that double, if not triple, in numbers of people just jumping online because everyone was at home, and you're right. You could find a niche about two guys making jokes about Bon Jovi. You could find somebody talking about the benefits of asparagus. You could find somebody figuring out let's talk about different types of concrete and whatever somebody's expertise was. Grab a microphone, start talking about it, and get on the computer. And they promoted it and marketed right, they would find a target group, which goes back to something I just actually showed my girlfriend this the other day. Do you know the philosopher Alan Watts?
Yes.
And he has this video, and I usually watch this at least once a year. It's a short little video, and if you look it up on YouTube, it's called "What Do I Desire?" And it's just this beautiful little monologue of Alan Watts talking about the advice that he gives to people when they ask, like, what do you want to do with your life? And the person says, I don't know, I'd like to do this, but I can't make any money doing that, so I figured I'll do this. And he goes through this thing and just says, you know what, find out what you desire in life and then research it, become a master of it, because everybody's interested in something. And once you find out what you're interested in and what do you desire, you're going to gravitate and find other people that are also interested in that subject. And then you can start researching that subject. You can become a master of that subject. And then maybe you might be able to get a good fee for being a master of that subject that you really desire, that you really know about and are really passionate about. And I watch that all the time, and it's very inspirational to me. And I try to share that with a lot of people, because a lot of people just don't know. They throw darts at a dartboard. And, it sounds like, again, you had reinvented yourself a number of times and now are doing the podcast you want to do. And I see this with musicians sometimes too, where I'm going after this way because I think it's going to pay bills. And then they find out, but that's not really the music I want to produce. I want to produce this music, but nobody's listening to this music. Well, maybe you're just not marketing. I mean, unless it's something really experimental out there that's really kind of weird, like throwing oranges at the wall and clapping your hands and, I don't know, banging pots and pans together. And nobody's ever made music like that. But even that I bet you somebody's done that before. So, but I mean, something out there you're going to find and gravitate. You just got to find that group that's going to get into that and understand that. And, anyways, I was going somewhere with that, and I kind of forgot where I was going with that. But
well, absolutely, I understand. But you were saying, there's a podcast for everything, and the podcasting, has grown exponentially in the last 5 years. It's exploded, and the pandemic, especially because you had celebrities at home doing nothing. So they started podcasts. So yeah, they're going to get the numbers, and, it kind of throws in a monkey wrench to the people that have been doing it for a while, because who are people going to listen to? Someone that is unknown, or are they going to listen to the huge celebrity that has a podcast and they're talking to Julian Lennon when you've been trying to talk to Julian Lennon for the last 20 years of your life, Yeah.
And unfortunately I've understood that numbers game since the beginning. When it was important for us to get the numbers so we can get sponsors. That was the whole numbers game for us, because we needed to figure out how we're going to finance all this. And when you look at the back end costs of producing one broadcast television series, you're looking at, just in a local market here, you're looking at somewhere in the mid six figures every quarter if you want to do it the right way. So you're looking at raising, $2-3 million on a low end for just a regional show. And you have to have enough numbers, but when the numbers don't match, like if you're only getting 15,000 viewers per show regionally, how are you asking for $500,000 on that 15,000 viewers? It doesn't. You're way overpriced, but everyone knows in the industry that's what it would take to cost to do a show. You'd have to pay for executive, producer, camera people, and audio people, line people, all the down the line, the actors, marketing, big one there, marketing, and so numbers were always important to us in that regard. But when we started our series, it was designed to feature the local person who had no numbers. They didn't have video cameras. They didn't have live streaming. They weren't taping and recording their sets and distributing them via YouTube or, that was pretty much it. YouTube or podcast series. So that was our show. But then I realized I had a really famous DJ come and play on my show. And I said, I think I'm on to something here. And that's when we started realizing that getting bigger names on the show obviously got met a bigger draw and more people watch. And as social media was just coming out in, 2008, 2009, a couple flicks of the keyboard could put us in front of thousands of people. Using a hashtag on Twitter could put us in front of potentially millions of people. And, it's always been a mix, though. We've always liked to try to keep that mix of focusing on the smaller artists, but also talking to the big name artists as well. And now they look at us, and we're working into the top 100 in the world by slowly building their base. But yeah, that's what they will do. You don't have the numbers, or who else have you had on the show? It's like, oh, well, it was in the email we sent to you.
Right. Well, this marketing and publicity is the key factor to success. I'm a one-person conglomerate. I do everything. I edit. I do the podcast interviews. I, go on social media and go into different fan pages of the musicians that I'm interviewing. I, post on Twitter. I try to engage with people on Instagram. You name it, I do it. I send out emails, pitching and plugging, and it's a lot of work. So, but I'm not getting paid for it. I'm just doing it because I love it. I'm the one that's putting out the capital for it, and it's not very much capital, if I'm being honest, but I'm the one that is, putting the blood, sweat, and tears into making something that I truly enjoy. And if that's how it is, that's how it is. Would I love a big sponsor? Sure. Who the hell wouldn't? But I'm doing it because it keeps my mind engaged and it gives me something creative to do.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely relate to that. I've had people literally accuse me of making six figures with my show, low six figures, but decent six figures with my show, when really I was paying out of the pocket and have been in the red for a number of years. And it was kind of insulting going, are you serious? You think I'm making all this big money? Yes, we have affiliate sponsors that we partner with, local businesses that see what we're doing, and usually there's some kind of trade agreement or something that we're working closely with them. And, we want to let the world know who we work closely with because they kind of recognize our efforts. I remember when I heard somebody say that to me, and I'm like, if you think I was making $250,000 a year, that I'd be living in the apartment that I'm living in and the production would be this, and I wouldn't be at least going, no, it's very, because the entertainment industry can be some smoke and mirrors in front of our production. You get a high quality production, people might think, oh, wow, you got money, or you're getting famous people on, you must have money, because I couldn't get that person on. So you must have paid, or you must have done something, or how did you get that person, or your numbers, it's like, everything we have is grassroots, and we do it with a passion and love. And I like that I've been doing it so long like that we are now positioned to go after that. But if we would have started out with a bunch of money from the beginning, I think I would have had a lot of expensive mistakes, and look back on, why did I spend $350,000 on that when I could have got it for $50,000, or, or could have got it for $10,000, or didn't have to really spend any money on that at all. So I think this grassroots movement with podcasting, where it is still a wild, wild west, anything goes. I was talking with somebody recently, and they're like, there is no podcasting regulatory body, that says this is the standards of a podcast and this is what it takes, and or to be recognized. And I think everybody's passion should be recognized. I remember I was talking with somebody a few years ago, a friend of mine, Brandy, and she had done an interview with me, And now I've seen the evolution of her podcast go from she was using her phone with no light to getting a little bit of better light to a little bit better interviews, launching in different shows, different topics, and really growing and building her social media, and just kept going with it and going with it. And it's really exciting to see it. And it takes me back to remembering do you know who Gary V is? Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Go back and look. And I remember this one episode. It was something that he was doing. He was talking to the camera about how he got started and how his success rose. But what was happening while he was talking, there was a little picture up here. And what it was doing, it was cycling through every podcast from the beginning, first podcast he did, to his latest podcast. And it was like 1, 2, 3, 4. It was counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the corner as he's talking to the camera, going, yeah. And you could see the quality of the podcast getting better and better and better and better over time. It was just really, it was very inspirational to me. And again, I'm not a fan necessarily of Joe Rogan, have nothing against them, but you go back and look at Joe Rogan's first episodes. They weren't high produced episodes. I mean, they're like, now look at them and they're like, lights, camera, action. Hey, look great. Right. He's getting multi-billion-dollar contracts with Spotify,
Right. Well, just circling back to what you were talking about, oh, you must have a whole bunch of money because you got this guest or that guest on. And I've been asked about this on my podcast. I only have 40 episodes in the tank, which really isn't a lot in the whole podcasting realm. I guess it depends. If you're like a fiction-based sort of podcast that tells a story, it might be like television where they have 6 or 8 episodes a season and then they take a break and come back. That's different. A lot of talk shows I know that have been around for 2 years have over 200 episodes in their history, and that's quite a lot, and that's probably where I'll be too. But people ask me, how did you get this guest, or how did you get that guest? And my simple answer was, I just asked. That's all. I just sent an email to them and they said yes. You have to be gutsy and put yourself out there. If they say yes, great, I've got the interview. If they say no, oh, well, maybe I'll try later, or maybe I won't. Maybe they'll come asking when they see that the quality of my podcast is what they would like to be on because so-and-so guest was on. So, there's really no rhyme or reason to it either.
Biggest saying I've told a lot of people in this, when I used to give away 98% of my information, that I'd say, because I read it all. It was in a book somewhere. I researched online, looked it up, found it, figured this out. Everything's out there, but I try to jumpstart people's, if they want to get into this game, jumpstart them a little bit. And I'm now down to 97% of the information because now there's a lot of competition. So I just don't like giving my competition. No, I'm not giving, you're my competitor now. I'm not giving you my secrets. Not everything, but the biggest one that I like to give though is, and it's not mine, I didn't make this up, but it's you miss 100% of the shots you never take. And You're right. Just asking is just knowing. And we'll hit up people, and it might be a PR person, and we're going after one artist on their roster list. And they'll say, nope, so-and-so isn't interested. That's the email we get back. The immediate reply is, oh, that's great, they're not interested. How about anyone else on your roster? Would they be interested? And they go, no, it comes to it. Yes, this is so-and-so's releasing this right now. Let's get them set up. And that might be a first introduction because they might just be saying no because they don't know us. They've never worked with us before. And then when we do that one interview, it kind of goes, hey, you did a great interview with so-and-so. Here's my roster. And we're like, yeah.
Exactly. You just hit the nail on the head. If you get a no, like you said, do you have anyone else on your roster that you would like me to speak with? And 10 times out of 10, they're going to say yeah, because they might have an up and coming artist that really isn't getting the attention that they need or deserve or want. They want more. So yeah, of course they're going to push that one. And then that's the gateway to perhaps opening the door to other artists, including the one that you asked for in the first place.
Exactly. Okay, there's one of my 97% suggestions of how to do things. Yeah. But, and again, it's, I also, you're on a very good pathway to doing this. It sounds like you're going to accomplish this. You are hitting about an average of 8 episodes a month is what it looks like. If you started in February and you have 40 episodes under your belt, that's a February, March, April, May, June, parts June. So just about 8-9 episodes. So, I used to tell people, if you're really serious about this podcasting thing, you really want my help to take it to that next level, maybe get into that 98th percentile of information, I'd say come back to me after you get 100 episodes produced. And, if a person was producing 1 episode per week, it'd take them about 2 years. And that would really tell me, okay, you've been doing this for 2 years, 1 episode per week. Okay, you're really kind of committed to this. But if you get in and you're 12 episodes in and you're like, this is hard, I don't know what to talk about, there's so many resources out there. And you can just go watch other podcasts. Like, find the podcast genre you like, find what the top podcast is, that genre, and see how they're producing their show. You don't got to necessarily steal or knock it off, but you can go, wow, okay, they are using cameras, they are using green screen, or they might be using a light. A lot of us out there always tell people, hey, what kind of microphone are you using? What kind of lights are you using? Where'd you get that? Are you using lavalier mics, or what switcher are you using to go back and forth between cameras? A lot of us are really giving, because we all started out like that. We didn't know what we were doing. We're like, I kind of had a background, but this turned into a whole digital medium, and learning. And luckily, there was a good transitionary period where I got into digital, working for Apple and doing all of that stuff. But that's why I would give away all my knowledge, because the more I could help build the community, the stronger it made the community as a whole. And I was once in a meeting and somebody said, oh, Darren, you got this podcast series. You do this, you do that, you do that. How much money should I spend on starting up my podcast? I said, how much money you got? I go, a few $100s. I go, you go spend that. You don't got to spend $5,000 and get all this crazy gear and all this stuff. Find out if you like it first. And the best thing you can do is go spend $100 on a microphone, and go spend $100 on lighting, and go spend $100 on a green screen backdrop, and at least make it look good, and make sure your internet connection works well too.
Oh, definitely. There's nothing crazier than to have an internet connection that is spotty, especially with the interview process, because if it freezes, you're in a limbo.
Yep, I had that happen before. Well, is there anything that you could say in your experience in starting a podcast, some piece of advice you could give to podcasters? What's the one thing you would give to podcasters if they want to start out?
Find something that you love and go with it. Just do it. It may take a couple of episodes and it may be rusty, and in all honesty, it may sound like crap, but do it and keep at it. And, just like you said, find something that you really enjoy and stick with it. You could branch out and do other variations of it, but at the core of it, be who you are, be your genuine self. And like you said, listen to other podcasts. Sometimes you'll hear a question and say, oh my gosh, that's the greatest question I've ever heard. You might want to reframe it because it might be that particular podcaster's signature question, but use that. Go online and find out, reading interviews. You'll, get a lot of nuggets out of that too. Mm-hmm. Find out what the interviewer is asking to get a thoughtful answer from the person you're speaking with, because there's nothing worse than hearing an interview with someone and you've heard the interview with that particular individual a dozen times before, and it's just like they're going through the motions. You want to have an engaging conversation that they walk away from and say, hey, that was really cool. I want to talk to that person again. You don't want a form, you want a formula, but you want to, I guess, veer off and make it your own.
Yeah, definitely. I have a 300 question page sheet that I draw from. So, and my formula is kind of randomized, and I do my research on my people before I go to their socials. I see what they're up to, find out what they're up to. And then one piece of advice is I always ask, is there anything you want to talk about or highlight in the interview that I can put into my notes beforehand? Now, if I had a team of writers, my writers would go out and research these people, and I'd be able to come up and hit them with some really deep facts. But again, the kind of the one person show here, and I go in and get what I need. And my viewers keep watching and keep subscribing, so I must be doing something okay. Well, Sherry, where can people find out more information about you? And if they want to subscribe to your podcast, where can they go to do that?
Well, I have a Facebook page. It's Analog Smile. So ANALOG Smile. And you could find that same username on Instagram. On Twitter, I could be located at Analog Smile Pod. And that's Analog Smile POD. I'm on all three of those. Not on TikTok. I'm not a great big TikTok fan, but I might go into that at some point or another. We'll see. You're not going to find me doing dances, that's for sure. But thank goodness.
I just had a meeting with one of my DJs, and I'm bringing on a social media manager to start handling our TikTok, because it is interesting. And if you want to, we'll talk about it post show. If you want to talk about that, okay. why it's important about TikTok. But yeah, I totally understand what you mean. I do cooking videos on TikTok. Under the DJ sessions. So if you go there, you'll see a bunch of cooking videos and stuff that's made in my kitchen. And then I make these videos and I add the music to it. And then I laugh my ass off for like 30 minutes going, it's so dumb. I get it, but I don't get it, but I get it. Like what happened when we just used to put posts online? Now you have to.
Absolutely. I know. But you can always also listen to Analog Smile on every major podcast platform too. It's on Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, Podbean, Google, you name it, it's on it. It's
awesome. Well, Sherry, congratulations on the endeavor of starting your podcast. We look forward to hearing more of your series and talking with you in the future again and following up with you.
Absolutely. And I look forward to having you on my show as well.
It'll be a fun time. I am one that can definitely talk about stuff.
So well, that we will do then. Thank you so much, Darren.
Thank you as well. You have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.
On that note, don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com. Find us on TikTok, find us on Instagram, find us on Twitter, find us on Meta. We're out there, thedjsessions.com. This is Darren, and that's Sherry coming all the way in from Tampa, Florida for the DJ Sessions virtual sessions. And you know what happens on the DJ Sessions? The music never stops.